Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to the View Up Here. I am your host, Canadian Glenn, and it is August 8th, 2018. Boo. How was your holiday Monday, Canadians? Did it work for you? It always works. Sorry, USians, you guys didn't have a holiday Monday this week. We did. Tonight on the View Up Here, Parliamentary Precinct Renovations. The project to rebuild and severely update all of Canada's buildings of Parliament. We're a decade in, and we're at least a decade to go. I'd guess 15 or 16 years to go, but you know. There's no question that Canada's seat of democracy, quote unquote, the Parliamentary Precinct in Ottawa, was already overdue for renovation and restoration when the official process started in the 1990s. Studies, inspections, proposals, hearings, and predictions play their part in all major spending programs, and this huge group of projects certainly followed that path. And like all long-developed and eventually delayed public works, price tags keep rising. To date, almost $5 billion have been spent or budgeted for these massive undertakings. Successive reports over the last 15 years from the Auditor-General have kept a better eye on things than most of the heralded spending programs. 2007, 2010, 2012, 2015. The Auditor-General has been keeping an eye on this, with the end goal of making the buildings of Parliament prepared into their second century, while not interrupting the governance of Canada. The road has been long, over a decade so far, with at least another decade to go. The Wellington Building has been completely renovated to house MPs and their staff, committee rooms, a library, support services, and restored to its original grandeur. The West Block is nearing the end of over 6 years of complete refit and expansion to host the House of Commons for the next decade. Now, a landmark in Ottawa, the former Union Station, and then the Government Conference Centre. After 4 years of work, that is the new Senate of Canada until Centre Block is finished. The East Block is in dire need of repair and restoration, but it will have to wait for a while. The first new building on the hill in over 100 years, although 90% of it is underground, the Visitors' Welcome Centre will eventually link the 3 blocks of Parliament and be the single public entrance to all of them. Next year, that will work for the public to enter the West Block. By the time it's done to connect the West Block, the Center Block, and the East Block, maybe by 2030. But currently, the big question mark looms. Center block. There can be no further delays, and it will be completely empty by the end of 2018. Now, there's no question it will take over $1 billion and a decade to complete. So I just want to provide a bigger picture on what's going on in Ottawa. Having been in Ottawa, well, about a year ago now, 50 weeks ago, these are huge projects, and they are important. For anybody who hasn't been to Ottawa, if you can get there and it's within your means, do it. You know, it's maybe not for the next decade with center block closed, but these buildings are very integral into what Canada is and how Canada was formed. You know, when I toured the center block a year ago, I always knew that, you know, Confederation, Upper Canada, Lower Canada, French and English. I knew that. That's Canada. But when you go through center block and you look at all the relief carvings and the symbolism, even at the arch entrance at the front of center block, there's a lion for English Canada, and then there is a stallion for French Canada. They're so intertwined. And, you know, maybe specifically people from the prairies. Maybe you should go out there and get an understanding of it. There are wonderful monuments to Canada itself. But if you're going to close center block for a decade, where the House of Commons is, where the Senate is, where the Memorial Chamber is, where the Library of Parliament is, you kind of have to do some work beforehand. Well, hence, that's where the last 10 years have gone. And like I said, it's going to be another 10 years at least to go, because after center block, east block, and finishing the Visitor Welcome Center. It's going to go on for a long, long time. But first, I want to cover a little bit about once you've been there and, excuse me. There we go. Once you've been there and you see how close all these buildings are that you've heard about, news and whatever else, the federal government owns a huge portfolio of real estate in Ottawa. Most of it is heritage, not all, but it's a huge portfolio. And it takes an awful lot to look after it all, and they don't always do so well. First thing I want to draw from is from the Hill Times by Laura Rickwart. This was in December of 2016. So keep in mind, these numbers are from calendar year end 2016. Vacant and partially vacant buildings owned by the federal government in the National Capital Region cost more than $40 million in upkeep costs in 2016. There were 22 vacant or partially vacant federal buildings in Ottawa listed in documents recently released in response to an access to information request filed by Ottawa researcher Ken Rubin and released to the Hill Times. Of course, Ken Rubin is who I drew on so heavily for the C-58 show. In all, these buildings cost a total of $40.6 million in upkeep in 2016. Now, the federally owned buildings inside and outside of the Parliamentary Precinct are managed by separate branches of Public Services and Procurement Canada, PSPC. You're going to hear that a few times tonight. PSPC, the landlord. The Parliamentary Precinct branch is responsible for everything within it, and everything outside of it is the real property branch. Now, the Parliamentary Precinct refers to the main buildings on the hill on Wellington Street, from the East Block to the Supreme Court, as well as all buildings within the area bound by Spark Street, Bank Street, and Sussex Drive. So for anybody who hasn't been there, on the north side of Wellington Avenue, you have the Rideau Canal, Chateau Laurier on the east side. On the west side is Parliament Hill. Then you move down a little bit and you have the Supreme Court. You have other government buildings on that side. You go on the other side of the street, straight across the street, you have Langevin Block, you have the Visitor Center, you have the Bank of Canada going down a little further, you have the War Memorial buildings. That's all the Parliamentary Precinct. Now, the 10 vacant and partially vacant buildings in the precinct cost a total of $1.3 million in maintenance between April 1st, 2016 and November 2016. That's not a whole lot of time, is it? 5 months, $1.3 million? Well, only 9 buildings in the Parliamentary Precinct are technically listed in the documents. PSPC said that $27,000 in maintenance costs listed for the old U.S. Embassy at 100 Wellington between April and November include upkeep costs for the vacant building at 128 Wellington, which is also known as the former U.S. Embassy Annex, but it's a block away. There are 12 vacant or partially vacant buildings in the rest of the capital region, costing $39.3 million in annual upkeep. In some cases, buildings on this list have been vacated for ongoing renovation work. Now, remember, this is 2016. Now, I'm sorry, Coach. I don't have any hot takes tonight. I'd already be into them. It's just the show. Besides, I'm stealing that from you. I can't do that. The Wellington Building on 180 Wellington Street saw its first occupants move in earlier this fall and is set to be in full use by the new year, which would be 2017. Also falling in this category are the West Block, the Government Conference Center, and the Canada Four Corners building at 93 Spark Street. Outside the precinct, the planned future National Defense Headquarters at the former Nortel campus at 3500 Carling Ave has been vacant due to construction. The federal government bought the building in 2010 for $208 million. No annual upkeep costs for that were included. And even in 2016 already, the Prime Minister's official residence, 24 Sussex, is vacant. It cost $180,000 for a 5-month period from November 2015 to March 2016. Many other buildings are simply empty or partially so, and in some cases have been for a number of years, with some reportedly near crumbling and in critical condition. Well, let's just run through them. You get an idea of how much money they're spending in their neighborhood, shall we say, with, of course, federal money. Bates Building, 109-111 Spark Street, costs $104,000 from April to November. 91% vacant, and the building's valued at $2.2 million in 2015. Canada Four Corners Building at 93 Spark Street, $83,000 to maintain it between April and November. 100% vacant. Building valued at $2.85 million. The Hope Chambers Building, 63 Spark Street, $125,000 maintenance between April and November. 63% vacant. Building valued at $10.3 million. The Nelms Building at 67 Spark Street, $24,000. Maintenance, 79.9% vacant. Building valued at $818,000. Saks Building, 75 Spark Street, $113,000 for maintenance and repair from April to November. 73% vacant. Building valued at $5.65 million. The old U.S. Embassy at 100 Wellington, directly across the street from Center Block. $27,000 from April to November for maintenance. 100% vacant, but yet that little building is valued at $11.25 million. Wellington Building. This is right at the end of the renovation. So this really gets me. I don't understand this. $405,000 between April and November, all related to maintenance. It is 1% vacant, but the building is valued at $198.5 million. I'm really at a loss why there are maintenance and repair costs in a place that is evacuated for complete renovation and restoration. The West Block, $181,000 between April and November, all related to maintenance and separate from costs related to the renovation. It is 100% vacant, and there is no value listed. Government Conference Center, 2 Rideau Street, $232,000 for maintenance from April to November and separate from costs related to the ongoing renovation. 100% vacant, the building is valued at $40.7 million. The 1500 Bronson Building and Annex at 1500 Bronson Avenue. $1.7 million in annual upkeep. Vacant since June 2015. The building is valued at $24.4 million. The Constitution Building, 305 to 307 Rideau Street. $3.07 million in annual upkeep. It has been vacant since September 2015, and its building value has not been assessed. The Federal Study Center at 1495 Heron Road, $1.1 million in annual upkeep. Vacant since December 2012. Building value is not assessed. The General Records Center Building, Goldenrod Drive, $868,000 annual upkeep. Partially vacant since March 2015. Building is valued at $10.4 million. Health Protection Building number 7 on Tunney's Pasture Drive. $1.4 million in annual upkeep. Vacant since August 2016. Building is valued at $10 million. The Insurance Building at 770 Heron Road. $474,000 in annual upkeep. Vacant since June 2015. Building is valued at $3 million. The Jackson Building at 122 Bank Street. $2.6 million in annual upkeep. Partially vacant since October 2013. Building value not assessed. People from Ottawa will know this. L'Esplanade Laurier Complex, 171 to 181 Bank Street. $15.8 million in annual upkeep. Partially vacant since October 2014. Building is valued at $196 million. The list goes on and on. The Nicholson Building, the old RCMP HQ, 1200 Vanier Parkway. $3.4 million in annual upkeep. Partially vacant since January 2013. The building is valued at $47 million. I'm just really surprised that Harper didn't somehow find the time to sell more of these. Sure, that's what he was after. One more I want to include is the West Memorial Building on 344 Wellington. The memorial buildings, west and east, were built right after the Second World War. They're huge post-war office buildings, about 8 floors. Look like a big block of friggin' stone. That's about it. They have a magnificent pedway and victory arch between them that no matter what happens to these buildings has to survive forever. But they've been empty forever. They used to be full of veteran affairs. They used to be full of Justice Department. But, between Chrétien, Martin, and Harper, those people don't have positions anymore. Those positions don't exist. But the West Memorial Building, $1.9 million a year to keep it up. It's been vacant since March 2008. 10 years at almost $2 million a year. The building is valued at $39.5 million. So, when this is the property portfolio with 2 separate divisions that the federal government deals with in Ottawa, you can understand why there might be some concern about how these Parliament Hill renovations go. They don't exactly have a sterling property management record, shall we say. That's just my opinion. Yes, cigarette drag. Sorry, no vaping, Coach. Tobacco. Okay, next we're going to go through the actual government website stuff, the information on these renovations that's available for everybody. Easy. There's always a lot more. It's just not always that easy to find. That's kind of why I do the show, But we'll start with the Wellington Building. Now, this is from Public Works, Government Services Canada. This is their stuff. Located across from Parliament Hill, the Wellington Building was constructed in 1927 for the Metropolitan Insurance Company and was substantially enlarged in 1959. Acquired by the Crown in 1973, the building was completely rehabilitated from 2010 to 2016 to accommodate parliamentary functions. The building will now house 70 members of Parliament, 10 committee rooms, and a library for years to come. The work to rehabilitate the Wellington Building included exterior, doors, windows, masonry, the copper roof, and the entrance canopy, replacement of the mechanical and electrical systems, seismic reinforcement, completely new security system, interior renovations, new furniture, and IT systems. The building now has an atrium in the center of it going up all the way through the building that was never there before. This is put in to allow for the environmental features that they built into this thing. Now, the Wellington is most famous for the mosaic in the lobby of the main entrance. It consists of thousands of colored glass tiles and its theme symbolizes health and well-being. Well, it was put up for a life insurance company. Experts from the Canadian Conservation Institute performed preliminary studies and trials and determined that the mosaic was in relatively good condition. However, cracked and crumbling mortar led to some unstable or missing tiles. Fortunately, cleaning trials upon the mosaic showed that it could be restored without being damaged further. So, mosaic conservation specialists performed the following treatments: a cleaning, a consolidating, which is reattaching, it stabilized the loose tiles, and replaced the missing tiles. And the Wellington Building was rehabilitated with the intent to help green government operations by reducing Parliament's environmental footprint. Sustainable and energy efficient measures include a green roof, complete with rainwater collection to water the plants and reduce energy consumption, solar panels to preheat hot water for the building, fully automated lighting systems. There's a light well to filter natural light all the way down the atrium and reduce artificial lighting costs. There's a green wall of plants to absorb carbon dioxide and dampen noise. State-of-the-art air recovery units to recycle heat. Construction crews on the Wellington reused or recycled 97% of the non-contaminated waste at the site. That means that approximately 21,800 metric tons of material did not go to landfill. Jolly good. Now to cover it from the government, construction started in 2010 and was completed in 2016. Cost was $425 million. That included all consulting and planning fees, design fees, demolition, abatement of hazardous materials, asbestos, without a doubt, seismic upgrading, restoration of exterior masonry and roof, replacement of mechanical, IT, and electrical systems, security, interior renos, furniture, IT equipment, and contingencies for $425 million. Now we get to the one that's got everybody's attention lately. West Block. Again, quoting the government. As a result of a fire that destroyed the original center block in 1916, the West Block is the oldest of the Parliament's buildings. The load-bearing masonry structure was built in 3 campaign periods. The south and east wings from 1859 to 1865. The northwest wing from 1875 to 1879. And the north wing from 1906 to 1909. The West Block is being rehabilitated to meet the current and future needs of parliamentarians while respecting its heritage character. In accordance with the long-term vision and plan, the permanent courtyard infill will serve as the House of Commons during the rehabilitation of Centre Block. Rehab work on West Block began in 2011, and building occupancy is planned for the opening session of Parliament in, I had to scratch this out and change it, 2019. Now, the work included replacement of electrical, mechanical, and life safety systems, rehabilitation of exterior masonry, sculptural elements, and decorative ironwork, replacement of the windows and roof, asbestos abatement and demolition, seismic and structural reinforcement of the building to withstand earthquakes, the excavation and construction of the courtyard infill to build the interim House of Commons, modernization of IT and multimedia capabilities. The building will house the interim House of Commons chamber and associated support functions, 4 committee rooms and support functions, and offices for the Prime Minister, House officers, party leaders, and party whips. The infill of the courtyard will increase the West Block's total usable space by approximately 50%. Following the rehabilitation of Centre Block, the West Block will revert back to being a facility by housing parliamentary office suites, and the infill will be converted into committee rooms. The chamber will be covered by a glass roof. The roof is designed to filter sunlight and outside noises. The bright and airy chamber will have a number of environmentally and people-friendly design features. Will include a triple glazed roof with controls to manage sunlight levels and LED lighting, which helps save energy. Let's get to the details. Construction started in January 2011, and building occupancy is planned for the opening session of Parliament in 2019. 8 years. Project cost, $863 million. That includes planning, consultant fees, architectural design fees, demolition, abatement, seismic upgrades, restoration of exterior masonry, replacement of windows and roof, replacement of mechanical, electrical, and life safety systems, modernization of IT and multimedia capabilities, security measures, interior renovations, furniture, and contingencies. $863 million. But is that the cost? We'll get to that. It wasn't that long ago that it was supposed to be over $1 billion, but now it's $863 million. But we may have an idea why. That's moving ahead. The old Union train station, which became the Government Conference Centre, which will become the Senate of Canada. This is indeed an iconic building in Ottawa, just right on the east side of the Rideau Canal. Something I didn't know until I did research for this show. Colonel By Drive is a road on the east side of the Rideau. I thought it was always there. Well, it wasn't. It was only there once they took out all the train tracks that went to Union Station. The Rideau Mall? Yeah, rail yards. That I didn't know. And you look back at some of the old pictures, it is quite interesting. It makes sense now why stuff is the way it is. On the east side of the Rideau Canal, you have a wide walkway that goes underneath the bridge between Rideau and Wellington. And the intersection of Sussex is there too as well. And Colonel By. It's all there. But that's where the tracks used to go. And there used to be another bridge across to Quebec, which was then Hull, over to Gatineau. So it's interesting to see how things have adapted over the years. Built in 1912, the Government Conference Centre, which was once Ottawa's central train station, occupies a prominent location in downtown Ottawa at 2 Rideau Street, a short distance from Parliament Hill. Other than limited adaptations done in the 1970s, the building remained in its original state and was in critical need of rehabilitation. Again, in accordance with the long-term vision and plan, once rehabilitated, the Government Conference Centre will accommodate the Senate for the duration of the Centre Block rehabilitation. Work began in 2015 and building occupancy is planned for the first session of Parliament in 2019. The building is a good fit for the Senate. It's close to the Hill and has a variety of column-free spaces that will adapt well to Senate use. Its high ceilings allow it to accommodate the interim Senate chamber. It will also house the Senate legislative and leadership functions, 3 committee rooms, and support spaces. Since there is not sufficient space within the Government Conference Centre to fit all the Senate functions being vacated, space in proximity to the East Block has also been leased. Now, it's not really clear exactly what they mean by proximity to the East Block, but I'm sure we'll find out. Now, the Government Conference Centre rehabilitation work includes restoring the stone masonry, seismic and exterior envelope upgrades to reinforce the building's structural integrity for earthquakes, replacing obsolete electrical, mechanical, and life safety systems, renovating the interior, removing outdated conference amenities added in the late 1960s, such as translation booths, conforming to accessibility requirements, removing hazardous materials, expanding the loading dock, and then ensuring compliance of vertical circulation, which includes elevators and stairs to meet building codes and barrier-free design. Now, the Senate chamber has been designed as a pavilion within the block, highlighting the volume of the original heritage space and preserving the historic vaulted, coffered plaster ceiling and skylight. The historic finishes and contemporary detailing resonate with the rich and long history of the Senate. Now, there's also something that they're doing here as a pilot program, but it's a good place to do it. Public Services and Procurement Canada has partnered with the Senate, Carleton University, and the Fairmont Chateau Laurier to launch Ottawa's first installation of urban beehives on the roof of a federally owned building. Interesting. The Parliamentary Precinct branch and the Senate Accommodation Project teams have partnered with students from Carleton University's Azrieli School of Architecture and Urbanism. These students were asked to come up with innovative beehive designs to be constructed and installed in 2018. Nobody but government can come up with ideas like this, can they? Now, the details of this work are the complete rehabilitation of the building and complete accommodation of Senate functions within the building itself and the additional leased space. Demolition began in early 2015. Major construction work began in winter 2015. Cost is $269 million. So again, same old planning, consultant fees, design fees, demolition, abatement of hazardous materials, seismic upgrading, restoration of exterior masonry and roof, replacement of mechanical, IT, and electrical systems, security upgrades, interior renovations in the Government Conference Centre and the leased spaces, furniture, and contingencies. So if you're keeping score, we're over $1 billion already. Again, sticking to the government word for this portion of the episode, the Senate, okay, never mind. The Senate are quite actually, you think it's just a bunch of old codgers sitting around in there. Their website's actually pretty good through the government servers. They do a good job. They're not as dumb as you think. this was more of a go team thing than anything, but still it was interesting. Senators all aboard for move to historic train station. Moving the Red Chamber into a new home will mean a short trip from Parliament Hill for senators and huge savings for taxpayers. When we were presented with the challenge of finding a new location for the Senate, we felt it was important to have a temporary chamber that mirrored the dignity, solemnity, and significance of Parliament's upper house. We also felt compelled to be fiscally responsible. That's from Senator Scott Tanis, chair of the Senate Subcommittee on the Long-Term Vision and Plan, which is looking after the Senate's end of things. There had been a proposal similar to what the House of Commons is doing, to have the Senate set up shop in East Block Courtyard. However, with taxpayer money in mind, senators decided to make use of the little-used Government Conference Center at a substantial savings to Canadians. With preparations to convert the historic train station into the temporary Senate on budget, the savings to taxpayers will be $200 million, compared to the original proposal to find an alternative location on Parliament Hill. So, well, you know, you have to make it clear though. They are moving there and made it a point of saying we're saving money because we're not doing what the House is doing. So I guess the House really doesn't have much comeback on that. Or maybe they just don't give a shit. One more thing about the Senate. Anybody who has been to Center Block, you'll know that the Senate end of Center Block is much more upscale than the House of Commons end. I mean, there is no shitty part of town in Center Block. It's a magnificent building. Could never be replaced. But the Senate foyer, where all the portraits of the regents of Canada hang, the picture of Queen Victoria that was cut out of its frame and taken out of the original Center Block when it was burning down, stuff like that. To see all that stuff, and you know, they're all one-offs. They can never ever be replaced. There's a lot of history and there's a lot of weight to the building. Whether you believe in what it is or not, there's just a certain sense of importance in places like this. Now, this is from the Hill Times. This is from August 30th, 2017, by Peter Mazarow. Paintings and old dishes, how the quote-unquote hoarders in the Senate care for its priceless artifacts. Now, the painting of Canada's former head of state, Queen Victoria, that hangs in the Senate foyer weighs roughly 700 pounds. It can't be relocated just anywhere. It must be placed on a reinforced wall that can bear the weight, and it's delicate. Even while transporting it in a moving truck, the vibration of the vehicle could pose a risk to the canvas. Now, moving the paintings of Canada's kings and queens is just one of the challenges for Senate staff as they prepare for the move from Center Block. The Senate's Property and Services Directorate, led by Brigitte Desjardins, is in charge of moving the Senate's heritage collection, including the portraits in the Senate foyer. Now, her team hopes to meet with officials in the Public Services Department next month to make a case for an extra $100,000 to pay for the cost of moving the collection and caring for sensitive items that can be damaged if handled improperly. An existing budget of $60,000, split evenly between art and furniture, is enough for the Senate to maintain and restore pieces in the collection as used and needed, but the move will require disturbing all of the items housed in Center Block, and thus more time, work, and money. Now, just again about the portrait of Queen Victoria, Mr. Mazareau says, it's already survived tougher trials. It has crossed an ocean and weathered 4 fires, including the 1916 blaze in center block, when staff sliced it out of its frame because it was too large to fit through the exits. Doorways could be a problem once again during the move out of center block. The entrance to the Senate chamber is roughly 4 feet wide by 7 feet high, and everything in the chamber that isn't nailed down, including the throne, from which the throne speech is given, and all of the desks of the senators are part of the collection, and they come out one way or another. Now, the Heritage Collection is made up of roughly 6,000 items and includes numerous chairs, benches, and lots of dishes. Many of those items are packed away in the Senate's storage facility in Gatineau, a warehouse sheltering a few hundred items not currently in use or on display, worn-out couches waiting to be reupholstered, the Senate's old phone switchboard, a pair of barber chairs from a closed hill barbershop, and many pieces of fine china belonging to old sets that have lost a few pieces and are no longer complete and usable for ceremonial dinner service, such as when the Senate Speaker holds a dinner when hosting foreign leaders. Now again, Senator Tanis from Alberta has suggested holding a garage sale or a high-class auction for the extra dishes and the barber chairs to get them out of storage and into the hands of Canadians who would appreciate owning a piece of history. The collection also includes a set of dinnerware that was swapped out when the Senate changed its logo in 2008. Conservative Senator Leo Houssakos of Quebec jokingly labeled the Senate a group of hoarders when it came to old dishes. Now, it isn't easy for Senate staff to throw away heritage items, even if they wanted to. Tossing even a broken piece of furniture requires approval from a board of administrators and then another board of senators. The Senate hasn't gone through that type of inventory process in years, since the administration prefers to keep and restore items whenever possible. If items can't be reused, the next priority is finding a way to display them for anyone in the public to see. That could include the new displays in the new Visitor Welcome Center. It could also mean loaning items out to museums. Now, the White House in Washington, D.C. has an entire room devoted to displaying old dishes. So you can understand, again, why this is a decade-long project. As I said, having been there and taken a look around the place, I've been in the Senate chamber and seen the throne and all the desks and everything else. Like, wow, you know. And the paintings that adorn the walls of the Senate that depict Canada's efforts in the First World War. These paintings are monstrous. They're 20 feet by 40 feet, if not more. They're huge. How are they going to get all this stuff down and get it out of there? Are they going to put it up in the new one? Or will it be stored for 10 years? You know, nobody knows. This is a big job. Really big. The House has nothing anywhere near that sort of level of ornate. Even the light fixtures, you know? I mean, they don't run on gas anymore, but still. So many things. Okay. Well, I'll get to the seismic upgrades in a little bit. But, I mean, in the last 20 years, there has been 3 earthquakes to Ottawa that have been between 4 and 5 on the Richter. And these buildings are old. So it does make sense, because imagine spending this kind of money and then an earthquake happens and it all falls down. This is the time to do it. So, I don't really have a problem with that. It does make sense, which is good. We are talking about the government, so that's fine. Now, the next Parliamentary Precinct building I want to talk about is East Block. Again, this is from the government website. Rehabilitating the East Block. The East Block is the most intact of Parliament Hill's heritage buildings. It is also one of the world's finest examples of high Victorian Gothic architecture. The East Block was built in two major campaign periods. The first portion was completed in 1865, which includes the main west and south wings, which are together referred to as the 1865 wing. In 1910, a second wing was added to the east side to enclose the courtyard. As part of the long-term vision and plan, the rehabilitation of the East Block will consist of two separate phases. The first phase will include masonry repairs to four of the areas of greatest concern within the 1865 wing. This includes urgent repairs to the southwest tower, the southeast tower, the south entrance, and the Governor-General's entrance. In addition, PSPC will implement an enhanced maintenance program until the building is fully rehabilitated. Well, there's a hint there when we go back to the start of the show about why there were these maintenance costs on empty buildings being completely renovated. There, maybe we see why. For the second phase, the department is assessing options for advancing the balance of work and full rehabilitation of the East Block. The full rehabilitation will address the remaining exterior work that was not completed in the first phase, including the 1910 wing, completing the seismic upgrade for the entire building, linking the building with the future Visitor Welcome Center, and replacing existing interior building systems with modern systems. The building will also be upgraded to comply with modern building standards and functional requirements to meet the accommodation needs of the Senate of Canada. While the interior of the East Block is in good condition, portions of exterior require an overhaul from foundation to roof. The rehabilitation of the Northwest Tower, which was completed in fall 2013, served as a pilot project for the upcoming masonry repairs within the East Block's original wing. I will jump in and say the first time I was on the Hill was in 2013. The Northwest Tower was all enclosed. Being back last year, that part of the building looks way better than the rest of it. Its exterior has some of the most remarkable examples of stonework and ironwork in Canada. Much of the work requires special care and will be performed by heritage masons. These craftspeople will use traditional techniques and hand tools. Major work on the 1865 wing was last performed in the 1970s. Areas within this wing are displaying signs of deterioration, such as cracked stones, worn carvings, corroded ironwork, and damage from water infiltration. It involves heritage masonry work, seismic reinforcement, the restoration of stained glass, leaded windows, and exterior doors, as well as the replacement of some of the copper roof and the conservation of ornamental ironwork. Now this says recapitalization work is expected to begin in 2017. Wrong answer. Still waiting. Now, what are they planning for phase one? Exterior repairs to the southwest tower, the whole south end. And yeah, I've been there. I've seen it. It looks like it needs it. Nobody goes in or out of the doors. Nobody's in the offices, in the towers. They're just like fenced off. Not that you see any of that when you take the East Block tour but that's how it is. Now this says expected to begin in 2017 and should be completed in 2020. This ain't no 3 years. Forget it. This is going to be 5, if not more. And it's not going to start until who knows when. Depending on how the West Block works and how the new Senate works in Old Union Station, with all the other buildings they have, they should be able to shut the East Block and get on it, if they can afford it, considering what's happening with Center Block. Now, so far, there's $81 million approved. And it's for all the same stuff: planning, consultants, design, seismic, restoration of the roof and exterior masonry, security, contingencies. Now, does that 80-some million apply to that? Doesn't matter. It won't be enough. Phase 2 would include the completion of the exterior areas not included in Phase 1. And blah, 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 everything else, including joining to the Visitor Welcome Center. That may be what drives the timetable for the East Block. Because if they're building the Visitor Welcome Center all the way past Center Block underground, you know exactly where it's going to be, and then come up on that corner where you stand to meet up with your tour guide, then that could drive East Block. Phase 2 is in initial planning stages. Yeah, I bet. As far as the East Block tour goes, it's by no means as spectacular as Center Block. Still, I found it very interesting. As I said, this building was built in 1865, and those are the parts that the tour are in. They have mock-up offices of a Prime Minister's office. I mean, every Prime Minister up until Pierre Trudeau had their office in the East Block. Then it went to what used to be Langevin Block across Wellington, which is now the Prime Minister's office, blah, blah, blah. They have a mock-up of a Prime Minister's office, but it is much back in the period. It is around MacDonald time. They have a mock-up of the Governor-General's office. That was the first building within Ottawa to have indoor plumbing. So that's in the 1865 part, I would imagine. And it was a gravity system, and guess where the toilets and the drains went? Through the rock, right into the Ottawa River. That's plumbing, gravity. It is very impressive. There's also off the Prime Minister's office, there is a cabinet room. The cabinet room. And there is a duplicate of the original table that was in there. But it's a duplicate because the original somehow disappeared. And Heritage Canada couldn't find it for the longest time. Then they found out where it was. The family of former Prime Minister John Diefenbaker had it in Saskatchewan. And apparently, when Dief the Chief checked out, because the table was built in the room, Dief had it cut down the middle, lengthwise, and took it out that way. That table at that time was nearly 100 years old. The government asked the family if they'd give it back. They said no. The government said, we'll sue. They said, go ahead. Sue a former prime minister for his old cabinet table. See how it goes over. So they let the family keep it. Friends in high places, yeah, honest people at the top. But it is quite impressive. It was very interesting to see. Now, what's come along since then, this is in 2014. So, I mean, this was included one little line in that government speak about East Block. It's from November 2014. It was in HuffPo, and it is by Dean Beebe. It said, Parliament Hill's oldest building, an architectural gem known as the East Block, is vulnerable to the frequent earthquakes of the Ottawa area and needs at least $66 million in upgrades to make it more tremor resistant. Even with that minimum hardening of the walls and towers, the East Block will still be only 60% as resistant to quakes as Canada's National Building Code requires for all new buildings. Now, this is from reports commissioned by Public Works in the wake of 3 major earthquakes that rattled the capital in 2010 and 2012 and set the Peace Tower and the Southwest Tower on the East Block swaying back and forth. The review of the building envelope investigation and screening reports have revealed significant and serious deterioration of the exterior masonry walls. Low-strength lime mortar or totally degraded lime mortar was observed in numerous locations. Seismographs placed in the towers of all 3 buildings on the hill recorded the impact of relatively large earthquakes in recent years. The 5.0 Val des Bois earthquake, June 23, 2010, the 4.5 Saint-Hyacinthe quake on October 10, 2012, and the 4.2 magnitude Buckingham quake of November 6, 2012. The Peace Tower showed strong motion for all 3 events, while the Southwest Tower of the East Block swayed in an east-west direction during 2 of the quakes. Now, we talked about the restoration on the north end. This mentions it on the East Block. Public Works has already undertaken a $14.1 million pilot project on one of the East Block's towers at the northwest, which included seismic upgrading to develop possible solutions for the rest of the building. The 2-year upgrade was finished in the fall of 2013. Until then, the tower had been held together with steel cable strapping to prevent its collapse. A 2012 estimate upgrading the rest of East Block to at least 60% of National Building Code requirements for quake resistance will cost $65.8 million. So that's in 2012, and that's only to 60%. By the time they get around to it now, it could be 150 or 200 million just for seismic. And that was kind of explained to us when we took the East Block tour. All of Parliament Hill, you don't have to go down too far, and it's rock. Hard rock. Building the Visitor Welcome Center, a lot of dynamite was used. And that's right there. And that's not going that deep. So this could be an issue. If there's some sort of fissure or something in the entire corner of that bluff of Parliament Hill, who knows? Who knows? Whoever has a goddamn alarm going outside, it'd be nice if you could shut the goddamn thing off. But I'll tell you what, it'll get louder. Asshole. All right. Took care of that. See, we're live. Now let's move on to the monster in the room. Center block. The government has been very polished talking about working on center block. Again, I return to their information. They call it rehabilitating a Canadian icon. Since 1927, only minor repairs have been made to the center block. However, short-term fixes are no longer a cost-effective option for preserving the building. I'll just say that the 1927 part is important because that's when the memorial chamber was fully functional and completed. That is the last thing to have been done there. The 2010 spring report of the Auditor-General of Canada predicted Centre Block would experience total failure sometime between 2019 and 2025. PSPC wants to begin addressing these issues before 2019. Centre Block currently has outdated systems and suffers from crumbling mortar, damaged sculpture, and stained glass and aging water pipes. Earthquake proofing and security are also issues that must be addressed. Several systems are very old and need replacing. For example, the original electrical system cannot safely handle modern technology like computers. The Centre Block Restoration and Modernization Project is part of a group of other important reconstruction projects involving the triad. Yeah, they don't say much how that sculpture got damaged, or there might be some broken stained glass. I think 2015. The next piece, they kind of give a timeline. And this has been updated, so they don't look silly anymore. Centre Block construction will begin in 2019. This will be the largest, most complex heritage rehabilitation project ever seen in Canada. PSPC will use innovative approaches and technologies throughout the project. When Centre Block reopens, it will be ready to meet the needs of a 21st century Parliament for years to come. The Centre Block Restoration and Modernization Project is extremely large. As each project phase is complete, project managers will determine next steps. As a result, providing specific dates and cost estimates may sometimes be challenging. The Government of Canada is committed to ensuring the best value for Canadians throughout the project. It will also work to be as open and accountable as possible. Okay. Now, the last missing piece, the only new piece to this whole parliamentary precinct, is the Visitor Welcome Center. Now, again, I turn to the government's sales promotion. Parliament Hill is one of Canada's most important heritage sites and popular tourist attractions. To improve visitor experience and enhance security to this iconic site, a new Visitor Welcome Center is being built. The new building will be designed and built in 2 phases. Completed, the project will link the West Center and East Block buildings. The Visitor Welcome Center will be a modern 4-level underground complex designed to blend perfectly with historical structures and the natural surroundings of Parliament Hill. In front of the main entrance, a plaza with trees and seating will offer a gathering and waiting area for visitors. From there, visitors will enter the buildings through a subtle yet elegant main entrance on the west side of Centre Block. Yeah, to explain that, if you're familiar with Parliament Hill, the large round area with benches directly in front of the main entrance below the Peace Tower, that's kind of the same thing they're putting down on the corner. The Visitor Welcome Center will have an arrival hall, a security post, scanning areas, an information and ticketing desk, an operations kiosk, seating, a gathering space, washrooms, coat storage, and of course a gift shop. Once screened, visitors will be able to discover the beauty and history of Canada's Parliament buildings. Currently, if you take the Centre Block tour, you end up going in the bottom level. Basically, you go in underneath the main entrance at the Peace Tower. And you go through security and screening down there. Then you go down they have, an area, and there are artifacts on display and a history, etc. Then once you leave that area, you go west underground, and the stairwell you come up is the first stairwell to the left of the rotunda. And if you take the tour, you probably go right up to the second floor, and then you go down towards the House Commons, and you see the House foyer. Anyway, the first phase of the Visitor Welcome Center is being built at the same time as the West Block is undergoing rehabilitation. Both projects will be completed in time for the 2019, yes, I changed that, parliamentary session. The first phase of the center will become the public entrance to the West Block. A second phase of the Visitor Welcome Center is planned. This phase will expand the center to the east, thereby connecting the West Center and East Blocks. Well, it ain't planned. It's going to happen. Phase 1 began in 2015. Excavation. Construction began in 2016, and it will be ready. $130 million. Same old stuff, planning consultants, design, security, interior, finishing, furniture, IT equipment, contingencies. It is the first new building to be built on Parliament Hill in over 100 years. And to mark this special occasion, a cornerstone made from Queenston limestone was set at the western entrance of the Visitor Welcome Center. Stone weighs approximately 1,000 kilograms and was inscribed by hand by heritage masons. The inscription reads, "This stone was laid by His Excellency the Right Honourable David Johnston, Governor-General of Canada." That's pretty much the last thing he did. So that's the government's sales on all these buildings. That's a lot of work. That's an awful lot of work. Now, we'll start to look at how this has come up in the media as this decade has gone by. Now, something I said on the show page, there's very little talk about this on national media. You hear when a committee has a report or when there's a vote or there's a deadline missed. That's about all you hear about. There's really no attention paid to the process. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to November 2012. So at this time, Wellington was underway, West Block was underway, and there's been a change. I'm not really sure where it is, but there's been a change in accounting, in the way things are added up. Because we hear about West Block now, $867 million. We hear about Wellington, $450. We hear about the Visitor Center, $130. But this is from November 2012. It was in the Globe and Mail. This is by Steve Rennie. Parliament Hill reno costs quietly soar above billion-dollar mark. The cost to repair Parliament Hill's crumbling West Block has quietly passed the billion-dollar mark. The revised work estimate for the heritage structure appears on a single line of federal public accounts for the fiscal year 2011-2012. The price tag for the renovation has soared since 2005, when Treasury Board approved $769 million to restore the building. In February 2011, Public Works, which was what PSPC is, said the cost had grown to $863 million, an increase of $94 million. The same day the government revised its initial estimate, former Auditor-General Sheila Fraser said she would not be at all surprised if the cost estimates increase over the life of the project. Now, public accounts documents show the latest estimate is $1.17 billion. Now, the billion-dollar estimate does not include a separate $425 million renovation of the Wellington Building across the street. So there we go. In its 2012-2013 report on plans and priorities, Public Works said that by March 31st, 2011, all major projects were all on schedule and on budget. The West Block renovation has been a lightning rod for controversy. The RCMP are investigating the relationship between Montreal company LM Sauvé and longtime Conservative supporter Gilles Varin. Company owner Paul Sauvé says he paid Varin $140,000 to help him win an $8.9 million contract to restore part of the West Block in 2008. Varin says he only got $118,000 for his work. Mr. Sauvé's company went bankrupt a year later and lost the job. Now, like I said, this is 2012. In 2011, the government awarded PCL Constructors Canada a $358.5 million contract to manage the West Block restoration. Well, that's a long ways from 863, isn't it? Sorry, had light smoke. Public Works brought in PricewaterhouseCoopers at a cost of $112,000 to do a financial audit of contractual payments and compliance with specified tendering procedures in relation to construction management contracts for the West Block, the Wellington Building, and the Sir John A. Macdonald Building. The auditors must submit their findings by the end of March 2013. I just had to check my dates and I lost the page. Although Public Works has the option of extending the contract by up to 5 years. So understand what that says. There could be an audit coming. It could show fraud. It could show who knows what. But Public Works has the option of extending the contract by up to 5 years. Public Works has yet to say if the PricewaterhouseCoopers audit has anything to do with the higher cost of the West Block. Interesting. Keep in mind who the government was in 2012. From June 28, 2014, in Maclean's by Dean Beebe. Glowing report card masks Parliament Hill renovation problems. Public Works says its multi-billion-dollar makeover of Parliament Hill is right on schedule, but an internal document casts doubts on that claim. The department has awarded itself top marks for on-time delivery of major projects in the Parliamentary Precinct, saying more than 90% have met their deadlines. Now, that 90% target was set in 2012, after the Public Works came under fire from then Auditor-General Sheila Fraser and others for weak accountability for the expensive refurbishing of the crumbling buildings, including West Block. But Public Works' most recent report card shows that only about 70% of all projects are actually on time. The rest are behind schedule, some of them by a long way. But the department gives itself good grades anyway because it either plans to adjust the schedule to accommodate straggling projects or find a way to catch up. How government? We'll just change the rules because we like check marks, not X's. When measuring results, green and yellow ratings are considered to be on target, says an internal Public Works report, obtained by the Canadian Press under the Access to Information Act after a 5-month delay. Where projects were assessed a yellow rating, action plans and mitigation measures were put in place, which is why these projects are considered to be on target. One project to improve technology throughout the buildings falls well below 30% for on-time delivery. Capital construction and renovations, the two biggest project areas, are each at about 80% for on-time delivery. Now, the internal report dated August 20th, 2013 is the most recent at the time of this article. Annual accounting of the money spent fixing up the historic structures on Parliament Hill and area. From 2001 until March 31st, 2014, the various projects have cost taxpayers $1.4 billion. A consultant hired by Public Works in 2006 estimated the total cost could be $5 billion over 25 years. But the number was only preliminary in the absence of clear information about the repair work needed. So, gee, do you think it's going to go higher than $5 billion? The department has cost contingencies of up to 25% built into its financial projections to account for the uncertainties in preserving heritage buildings. There's one more thing to add from the current report card. The center block wasn't even on this report card because they knew it was going to be so long until they could actually say anything about it and not get held to the fire when they were wrong. They just took it off. Now, even here, and this is from June of 2014, it says rehabilitation of the West Block, the biggest current project at over $1 billion, is about a third complete. So again, we have two references, one from 2012, one from 2014, that says West Block is over $1 billion at that stage. Stayed pretty much out of the news. Nothing really noteworthy because nothing really changed. Everything just kept rolling along. Wellington finished up. West Block's rolling along. McDonald Building's done. Work. Visitor centers being built. October 23rd, 2017. Hill Times. Kristen Shane. The powerful House of Commons Board of Internal Economy met for the first time in public last week. Now here's another indication of how much government costs. MPs heard the cost to run the House of Commons rose $33 million last year to nearly $546 million. Public Services and House officials also updated the board members on three big ongoing construction projects on the Hill, involving the renovation of the West Block, the Government Conference Centre, and construction of a new underground visitors centre. So here we are, October 2017. Wellington's already gone. PSPC Assistant Deputy Minister for the Parliamentary Precinct Branch, Rob Wright, told MPs his confidence is growing that now that the projects are nearing completion, they would be done on time and on budget, though he didn't make any guarantees. The most complex and the highest risk work is complete on the West Block and Visitor Welcome Center, Phase 1. And it says here in this article, they are scheduled to be ready to use starting during the fall 2018 parliamentary session. All major projects continue to track on time and on budget. My message is a message of confidence that we'll be ready, said Mr. Wright. So, we talk about 2012, 2014, both over $1 billion for West Block. 2 years apart, two different articles, two different sources, over $1 billion. Here we are in October 2017. The West Block is in the midst of being restored so that it can house a temporary House of Commons chamber and MP offices currently in Centre Block. The West Block closed for renovations in 2011 and they are projected to cost roughly $863 million. That's the number we still have today. Mr. Wright said the target date for substantial completion of the West Block is May 10th. Masonry work on the outside is finished. Finishing work is underway on the inside. 700 people are working daily on the project. There won't be as much office space in West Block, said Susan Kolba, a House of Commons Senior Director managing the project, noting that WIP's assistants have been told. Some ministerial suites will have to be relocated to the Confederation and Justice buildings on Wellington Street, west of the Hill, prior to the West Block moves. Acoustic testing to ensure MP staff and visitors can hear well what's happening in the new House chamber is set to start in December 2017 and continue in stages as the room is finished. Once that's done, officials would return to board members in March 2018 to update them on the progress so they can make the final call about a summer move-in. Well, as we will demonstrate, that certainly didn't quite happen. The goal is to start moving furniture that's not in regular use in Centre Block to West Block in June, with the rest of it moving once the house rises for the summer at the end of that month. If the plan is delayed, officials are working on contingency plans. House Speaker Jeff Regan suggested that if the move-in doesn't happen over the summer of 2018, it might have to wait until the next summer, as the only other break in the parliamentary calendar in December-January would be too short. Mr. Wright said he had equal, if not more, confidence about progress on the Government Conference Centre for the Senate of Canada. The GCC project is neck and neck with the West Block in terms of completion, said Mr. Wright. Although the slide presentation appeared to show it at only around 65%. The Visitor Centre, which former Governor-General David Johnson laid the cornerstone to, as one of his last acts in that job, is around 85% complete. So the costs have gone down, and even October last year, oh yeah, everything's on schedule, we're good. Well, now we move to 2018. Starting to be more news, because there's deadlines, there's photo ops, there's tension. What better way for information and entertainment to bring the world to you? Infotainment. Dun, dun, dun. January 29th, 2018. Hill Times, Laura Rickowert. So far, roughly $852 million has been authorized for the Centre Block Rehabilitation Project, bringing the total cost of Parliament's renovation to almost $3.5 billion to date. This is the first hint of what actually happened. And again, this certainly wasn't on corporate media. The Centre Block building is emptying out, and it's just around the corner, at least based on current department timelines. But the present occupants say they're skeptical the big move into the West Block and GCC will actually end up happening this summer. I highly doubt that it's going to happen, just because I've had tours of West Block, and I'm not convinced the West Block is going to be ready. That's from Rob Sutherland, Chief of Staff to the NDP Whip, who is Marjolaine Boutin-Sweet. PSPC has indicated the move will take at least 2 months to complete, and so far, no NDP offices in Centre Block have begun planning to pack up. A new loading dock and tunnel connected to the new underground Visitors Welcome Center was built as part of the West Block Rehabilitation Project. Along with being the access route to move furniture into the building, Mr. Sutherland noted it's also how food for the West Block's cafeteria and restaurant will be shipped in, as there's no kitchen planned for the building. Instead, prepared food will be brought in from the new food production facility completed in the fall of 2009. Conservative Whip Mark Stroll, a member and spokesperson for the Board of Internal Economy, said the board has been told that everything is on track for the move, with a final report anticipated in March to determine whether or not the move to West Block will take place on the original timeline. PSPC was still sticking to the timeline at the end of January. Now, as far as the center block goes, an architectural and engineering services contract for $127.4 million had been awarded to Centrus, and a $598 million construction management contract awarded to a joint venture of PCL and Ellis Don. So that's $725.4 million. So far, the Treasury Board has authorized $852 million in funding for center block. But this budget will be adjusted in a 2019 timeframe once investigators are completely and fully projected scope, understand the building itself, the costs, and the schedule. Now, on January 19th of 2018, PSPC posted a new advance contract award notice for the supply, fabrication, and delivery of 10 to 15,000 cubic feet of select clear buff Berea sandstone for center block. Cleveland Quarries listed as the pre-identified supplier. No value was listed for that contract. Center block's renovation is still in the very early stages of implementation. Investigation work to assess heritage features and determine the state of the building has already begun, as have efforts to determine operational requirements for the building to be modernized to support a 21st century parliament. Now, at this point in time, many of the offices and corridors from the second to the fourth floor of the West Block are now completed. The public galleries around the interim House chamber have been installed, and the structure to support the Speaker's chair is being built, with interior finishes on the chamber itself getting underway. So this is basically 4 months before they said they're going to be 100% ready to move in. And this is where they are. Over in the Mackenzie Tower, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will have his office, with a cabinet meeting room nearby, the heritage wood and plaster finishes in the office have been carefully restored and reinstalled. Now, in all, as of the end of 2017, $2.64 billion had actually been spent through the door renovating Parliament's historic buildings, including interim spaces. You don't see this mentioned anywhere else. The Valor Building, which was completed in 2010 at a cost of roughly $77.5 million for MPs and other staff. We're up to around $3.5 billion when you put in what has been approved by Treasury Board for center block. Of course, at this point, everybody was sticking to the summer timeline. Now, you heard the part about new technologies, blah, blah, blah. Indeed, they are. With the center block renovation, they are breaking new ground. This is something that probably in 10 years you're going to see everywhere on any kind of heritage restoration. This is from the Globe and Mail of February 13th this year. An article by Ivan Semenuk. The restoration and modernization of Parliament Hill buildings will give them an extraordinary second life. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing, says Dr. Stephen Fye of Carleton University, who is assisting with the work by building a three-dimensional database of the center block and all its parts. Every detail of Canada's most iconic building, both inside and out, is scanned and documented in a three-dimensional database known as a building information model. Dr. Fye is a director of Carleton University's Immersive Media Studio. It is a digital playground where architectural dreams can be conjured up out of the ether of virtual reality, where Canada's Parliament buildings have found an extraordinary second life. With the center block due to shut down this fall, for a decade-long makeover, the House of Commons and the Senate moving to temporary digs, preparations are well underway for the mother of all renovation projects. But even before the contractors get to work, Dr. Fye and his team have been busy with a suite of high-tech tools, capturing every detail of the building so it can be recreated as a digital model that will serve as a reference for the project. It really is creating an as-found record as the starting point for the whole rehabilitation team. In practice, the effort means that every detail, both inside and out, is scanned and documented in a three-dimensional database. Since the advent of computer-aided design, such an approach has become standard practice for new buildings. Starting 9 years ago, with his involvement in a refurbishment project for the West Block, Dr. Fye pioneered the method as a way to aid in the restoration and modernization of heritage buildings. The approach includes using lasers and cameras that can scan and capture every architectural feature and detail, including those that are rarely seen close up. Using these data, Dr. Fye has developed what is essentially a digital representation of the building and all its parts. That representation, in turn, is a visual index in which every element is tagged so that engineers know what the element is made of, what it connects to, where it came from, and, in the case of movable objects such as paintings, where it is stored. Asked if the model is accurate enough that, in theory, someone could use it to reconstruct an entire life-size copy of the Parliament buildings elsewhere, Dr. Fye said without hesitation, yes. The point is not simply to record what is there. As the First World War era complex, center block, begins its second century, it will have to continue to accommodate the needs of a functioning modern Parliament while maintaining the aura of tradition. Requirements for accessibility, sustainability, communications, and a host of other operational considerations that were not even dreamed of when the Parliament buildings were designed virtually guarantee that some things will change. By working with Dr. Fye's building information model, engineers can use a common reference point to test their ideas and make sure different proposed upgrades to the building's features and systems do not cause problems or run at cross purposes. The results can make for a stunning virtual reality experience. In his workshop at Carleton, Dr. Fye has created a digital tour of the Senate, showing the parliamentary chambers as they are now, and then stripping away furniture, carpets, risers, and paneling to reveal the underlying infrastructure, like an architectural X-ray. The main challenge to Dr. Fye's computers is the sheer complexity of the Parliament buildings as a data set. The center block has about 1,800 windows, all of which must be separately documented. The hardest of all is the steeply sloping roof, with all of its dormers and intersecting planes. Part of the rehab project will involve repairing many of these features that have deformed over time, as the underlying steel framework resting on wooden runners has aged and sagged. There's really no regular geometry there, Dr. Fye said. Packing all of that into a computer model may not be easy, but it comes with an important benefit. By including every detail of the Parliament buildings as they are now in his digital model, Dr. Fye can help turn back the clock and recreate what was there when the buildings were brand new. This has proved especially useful for restoring exterior features that have weathered away after a century's worth of Ottawa ice, rain, and sleet. To resurrect these features, Dr. Fye can bring the weathered piece into his lab for a detailed scan. The data from the scan are then used to recreate it in its current weathered form as a piece of high-density foam. Using archival photos for reference, a sculptor can add clay to the foam to build back up what the weather has taken away. That version is scanned and used as a guide for a robot drill that can rough out the stone replacement for the piece, leaving the fine details for the sculptor to complete. Phil White, for the past 12 years, has occupied the singular role of Dominion Sculptor within the federal government. How's that for a job title? Imagine going to a football game or something, talking to the guy beside you. Yeah, what do you do, man? I'm the Dominion Sculptor. Wow. He is the only one. A job that requires him to repair sculptures in the parliamentary complex and create new ones. He said the marriage of new technologies with traditional craftsmanship have been a boon to the restoration effort. It has also reignited interest in architectural sculpture, something that modern design had until recently relegated to the history books because of the cost and changing styles. So that is very interesting. And a personal note there, that is the most amazing thing about Center Block. You can see pictures of it, or whatever. You take a virtual tour, or whatever. When you go there and you look at the detail, there are things that are virtually hidden in alcoves, little stone reliefs, little faces carved out of stone. Some of them are the people who work there. The things that you can find when you're allowed to look around are simply amazing. And considering it's all going to have to come apart to get what's underneath, yeah, you're going to need an amazingly accurate record. And again, we go back to the stuff where people talk about some damage to, sculptures or marble or what have you. Well, most of that damage was caused by bullets. And with the new system of foam, clay, etc., there should be no problem. They don't say how much this is costing, but I think it's one hell of a good way to do things. You're not really allowed to stand around too much in Center Block. When your tour ends, you end up at the gift shop. What a surprise. Now, if you have taken the additional option of going up the Peace Tower, then you go from the gift shop and you stand to the one side in the Hall of Heroes, which is the wide hallway that goes directly north back to the Library of Parliament. And yes, that is the hallway. When you stand there in that hallway, if you look around close enough, you can see remnants from that day. From there, you go up the stairwell directly to the east of the rotunda, and you stand in line again to get into the memorial chamber and to go up in the Peace Tower. That's where you see that view all the time, looking down on the rotunda. Even just all the detail in the arches on a walkway to the memorial chamber. There is a lion holding a sword with a shield carved standing outside the memorial chamber. These things are irreplaceable. Like, I just can't imagine how they can be made again for any reasonable cost. But if an accident happens, if something gets broken, something gets destroyed, something gets lost, with this virtual model, there's nothing that cannot be recreated. And not only can it be recreated as the original it is replacing, but it can be improved if the original is damaged. It's a hell of a good idea, and no finer place for it than the center block. Now, moving on, well, damn it, I might as well just finish this and I'll shut up about it. After you go through the Peace Tower and the Memorial Chamber, then you go to the west side, left, around the rotunda. You go down the matching staircase on that side. Then you're in the rotunda, and it's basically, okay, thanks for coming. There's the front doors. Get out. You are allowed to hang out in the rotunda and take pictures and stuff. When I was there were two armed members of the PPC, the Parliamentary Protection, or PPS, Parliamentary Protection Services, standing there, and I talked to them for a minute. I asked them how long they had been there. One of them said he had been there for 15 years. He said there are still things he sees to this day that he has not seen before in that building. And I just, I said, well, you guys got a pretty nice workplace. Amazing place. March 28th, 2018. It's down to the wire to decide on center block summer move-out. This is in the Hill Times from Sherelle Evelyn. A March 22nd update from House Administration staff on West Block renovation work. The committee handling legal matters and financial matters affecting the House Commons, BOIE, heard it would have to wait until later this spring to receive a definitive answer. Some center block occupants have been skeptical that the original timelines would be met for the House and Senate to move by the start of the next session. Now, that report will come at some point before the final scheduled sitting day for the House of Commons, which is June 22nd. I thought you guys were moving in June. The Board of Internal Economy will be informed of the progress of the project before the House rises in June 2018, and the actual move date will be determined based on the construction status and operational readiness of West Block at that time. Ongoing monitoring and risk assessment is critical to informing a decision on move timing. No shit, Sherlock. What's mentioned in this report is they're now underway with acoustic testing in the Commons chamber, and it doesn't seem to be working out too well. Yeah, I don't know why. You got all stone walls and you got a glass roof. Acoustic problems? Really? April 2nd, 2018. This is in the Hill Times from Laura Rickawart. MPs, senators, staffers brace for center block's massive move-out, and a lot of them won't be returning. We will be separated for a long time. Will it be an issue? It could. Other than Wednesday morning caucus meetings, we never see those people unless we actually go down there and talk. We would actually now have to go out and go down to their new building, said Conservative MP Kevin Waugh. Which I bet you we won't. Wasn't that just a sterling application of cooperation in government? This is caucuses of the same party, Conservative Party, the House and the Senate. Yeah, we hardly ever walk the 200 yards to see them. We have to go to another building 3 blocks away? Yeah, I doubt it. Speaking with the Hill Times after a caucus meeting, Mr. Waugh said that day he'd sat in a row with 3 other senators, including 2 who he said he didn't really know and only recently got a chance to know, Nunavut Conservative Senator Dennis Patterson during a trip to the north over the second break week in March. I had my eyes opened. I don't know why it took me 2.5 years to get to know him. Now we've got 2 different buildings. So you just wonder if we'll get together as much as we should. What the hell does that mean? It took you 2.5 years to actually meet the dude now. I found out how important many of them are in the Senate. And we have the same vision for this country, and sometimes we need to do a little bit better to communicate between the Senate and the House. My God. Now, the one thing that Mr. Waugh does raise is that he encourages his constituents to travel to Ottawa. Apparently, if the House is sitting, he takes his constituents on their own tour, which would be good. You get away from the tour guides, although they are top-notch. If you ask them questions silently one-on-one, you will get different answers than what they tell you. But then, that's if you know anyway. I get welled up when I bring people to the memorial chamber upstairs. When you leave this place for 10 to 15 years, a lot of us won't be returning. We're at that age. It's going to be a sorry sight. Well, it's not supposed to be a career. Public Services and Procurement Canada, the department responsible for construction on the Hill, has not yet deemed the projects behind schedule. But whether or not the move out of Centre Block will go ahead as planned remains an open question. PSPC officials were expected to give the Board of Internal Economy a final go or no-go decision on whether it would be ready to move occupants out of Centre Block last month, but on March 22nd, officials indicated they needed until the end of the spring session to make that decision. Something else that has come up. Having the 2 chambers in separate buildings is presenting some logistical challenges for the House and Senate administrations. Traditionally, whenever there's a speech from the throne or a royal assent ceremony, which is mandated to take place at least once a year, MPs file into the Senate chamber to watch the proceedings. These ceremonies involve a parade led by the Usher of the Black Rod of members of Parliament heading from the House chamber down the hall to the Senate chamber. It's part of the Westminster parliamentary tradition. But whether and how this tradition will work when the 2 chambers are separated by a few city blocks is still being sorted out. Rob Sutherland, Chief of Staff to the NDP Whip, said officials with the House administration have been canvassing procedural staff in an effort to sort out such logistical questions ahead of the move. They're looking at various options. We could certainly pass a motion agreeing not to have a parade. All that procedure comes from England, and it's all very nice and traditional, but it's not procedurally necessary. Even now, only a small number of MPs actually head over to the Senate for such ceremonies. It's easier to see it on TV. I mean, they're going to try and find a way to do it. I have questioned ever since they talked about the West Block, what are you going to do if you have a January throne speech? Is Gentleman Usher going to have to slog through the snow down Wellington? Right now, there's a lot of parliamentary associations where you have senators and members, and they have a lot of joint events together in Centre Block. And I think that when you start seeing them divide up in different buildings, you're going to see less parliamentary activity that's going to include both of them. Mr. Sutherland said overall, he's expecting a real difference in atmosphere on the Hill when the House moves into West Block, and lamented the loss of the Library of Parliament space in Centre Block, which was renovated in 2007, but will have access to it closed off during renovations. It's actually one of the most beautiful buildings in the country, I think, and because of its location, it's going to be lost for an extended period of time. And I think that's really tragic. When I have a bad day here, I just go sit in the library and read for a while. It's great. Well, on a side note, I would have to agree with that. As spectacular as Centre Block is, the Library of Parliament is the crown jewel. I mean, I ain't been everywhere. I ain't seen everything. But the Library of Parliament in Centre Block is the most magnificent building I've ever seen. The renovations there were exemplary. And it is a truly amazing space. Liberal MP Kevin Lamoureux, who spends an inordinate amount of time in the House chamber as the parliamentary secretary to the government House leader, said proximity of the two chambers helps with fostering relationships between parliamentarians, and he expects there will be some impact as a result of the move, and for some MPs and senators more than others. That mixture of MPs and senators will no doubt be missed. It will be difficult to replace that. It's always nice to go someplace new, but nothing beats Centre Block as far as I'm concerned. There will be some changes, but all in all, it's not like we have too much of a choice, and in the long run, it'll be better for both institutions. Quebec Independent Senator Paul Massacotte said it's rare for senators or MPs to drop in on the other chamber. And rather than the physical distance to come, he said the fact that the Conservatives are the only party on the Hill to have senators in an official caucus has already had an impact on relations between parliamentarians. We don't know these people as well. A lot of new faces before there was a more friendly camaraderie, and that was useful. Wow, I see that I'm going to go into overtime. I'm surprised, but I will finish, because why stop now? Probably about 10 minutes left. You want to hear it live, 929-477-3894. Or try the Skype button. Surprise me. But I will finish it up. Otherwise, everybody who will be leaving it 2 hours, thanks. Yeah, wrap it up, he says. Well, it's not happening. Too much information. June 14th, the hammer came down. House Senate delay move out of Centre Block until end of year. They're saying it won't cost any more money. It's the right thing to do. Well, everybody knew that. I'm just seeing. Maybe I can squeak it in. What's left here? Oh, maybe. Okay. One more thing I wanted to cover. August 6th, West Block will be House Chambers home for at least 10 years, but the new glass roof only warranted for 5 years. Isn't that awesome? And it took an information request to find that out. That's it. To hell with it. I'm going to end the show. Less than 10 seconds left. Got a long way to go on Parliamentary Precinct, but keep your eye on it. Good night.